I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today we are in part 2 of our discussion of A Soul of Ash and Blood. We are discussing chapters The Maiden Speaks through present 10, or if you're like me, present X. Although it is Roman numerals. X. It's rated X. Deb, before we get into it, will you please discuss and share our nerdiest cocktail?
Absolutely. So tonight's drink is called Wilhelmina's Tonic, and it's themed after horny guards and gorgeous maidens.
Ooh.
La la. So this drink pairs well with being turned on by a girl with a weapon, a very great murderous creature, exacting revenge for the hot girl you're falling for, or making out under a willow tree when you should be kidnapping someone. It's got the Martini and Rossi Fierro aperitif, tonic water, and orange slice. It's quite easy. It'll be on our Instagram page.
It is. Thank you, Wilhelmina.
It's quite easy, just like Hawk.
Oh,
And you should already have the Fiero from last week. So.
Fierro. Sorry, every time we say that, that's what I think of. Dear listeners, that's from Wicked, just in case.
I knew that.
Just in case.
I did not know that.
It's, me with my not super current, although it is current because of the
current.
Ariana Grande. Well, that's a whole other podcast.
Is that your Nerdiest Thing of the Week? How far into a loophole did you get about Ariana Grande's affair?
That will be my Nerdiest Thing of the Week, actually.
So there is a girl online that does like these fake PR speeches.
I love her.
She's so funny.
She's really funny.
We'll link her in the show notes. But she just did one for Ariana
I saw
Grande.
that one. Yeah. She is really funny. So now it is time for our nerdy and dirty recap. We are going to have, one of us is going to have 60 seconds to give 10 facts or 10 quotes about what we read this week. And Mindy, did you spin the wheel o' names?
I did. And
Who is it?
It's me.
Oh, Mindy.
I haven't done one in a while, I feel
A long time.
Yeah.
Well, don't
I feel
fuck
a
it
little
up.
rusty.
Let me get my 1 minute timer. Are you ready?
Sure.
And away we go.
Number 1, Lauren and Defina try to make Hawk their bitch, and he's kind of flattered about it. Number 2, the Craven attack their eyes, and Hawk says, "You're a stunning, murderous little creature," and also nearly comes in his pants. Hawk gets woken up. This is number 3. Hawk gets woken up by a horny Britta, who he rejects because he has the hots for Poppy.
Nice.
Number 4, Kieran calls Cass out on all his shit, but not before he bangs a girl right in front of him. Number 5, Miss Willa's diaries. Number 6, Hawk fucks up the Duke. Number 7, The Right, including but not limited to. Hawk kills time with Poppy under the willow. Victor cockblocks their post-makeout glow. Hawk kills Lieutenant Smith. Victor dies and Poppy hacks up Mazine. Number 8, Hawk keeps Poppy from killing Agnes, and they leave to, quote, go to the Capitol. Number 9, Blood Forest finger bang, killing Craven. Poppy has the touch, and Kieran and Cass have a lot of questions. And number 10, Malik, whatever, and Millicent show up and are like, "What up, bitches?" And then Cass and Malik have a bro moment, and while Millicent just stares at Poppy.
That was perfectly
Wow.
60 seconds.
I'm going to be
was
honest.
amazing.
I didn't even remember some of that.
I know, me too. For a second, I genuinely forgot that there were some cut to the present, and I was like, wait, Millicent? She's not in this first book. I was like,
I
really
tried to hit the
confused.
highlights that weren't already hit from Blood and Ash. Yeah,
Yeah.
because we already know that stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
So for those of you that haven't read this yet and you're like, it's just a retelling, I think Mindy's recap just told you it's not.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a
of
lot of
stuff.
extra stuff that happens.
Especially in this section, I feel like there was a lot of new information. And
We're doing about the same number of pages every week, but this week felt like there was so much more to it.
yeah, I felt like that too.
Yeah,
for
it was
sure.
definitely more dense material.
Can I start off by saying what my favorite moment of this section was? 'Cause I'm really excited
Are we
about
going
it.
I do have a vocabulary.
Damn it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited. Okay, go with your
Sorry.
vocabulary.
Mindy, share our nerdiest vocabulary, won't you?
Well, this is what happens when we have books we love. I'm like, let's get to talking.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mindy. I really love interrupting your nerdiest vocabulary.
I think you all are really going to like it. So this is a character we don't actually see barely at all in this section, but we did have a nice little talk about him last time, and it's Emil, which I realized I never did because he doesn't really show up a whole lot.
What did you not do?
Emil.
You're like, I never did.
I never did him. So I might, after you all hear what Urban Dictionary says about him.
Oh.
Okay. So given what we talked about in last episode, some of these are actually ones that like might make you go, So it comes from the Latin word Aemilius, which means rival. Because remember, we talked about maybe he's the bad guy.
Well, he definitely is the one that Castile is the most jealous of.
Yeah.
Like with the way he
But
interacts with Poppy.
Whitney is standing on her platform of he is not the bad guy.
So Deb and I think he might be a bad guy. But
I mean,
so anyway, I just thought that was a very it could or could not
Whitney's
be apropos.
looking at it like, no, he's not. He's not the bad
Well,
guy.
for Whitney, it could also mean to strive or excel. And I do always kind of picture him as somebody who's very like scholarly almost in his presence. Like he's got a very
I picture him as a frat boy.
Oh, really? See, I picture him as very like
intellectual,
stoic, and an intellectual. That's a good way to put it. But it can also mean eager. So do what you want with that. Eager to piss Cass off. I don't know. It is the masculine form of Emily, which means pretty much the same thing, but could also come from the Greek word emelos, which means wily or persuasive.
That's him.
So that I think tracks. So I did go to the Urban Dictionary, and it had some questionable entries with words that no white person should be saying. So there were just a few choice entries. So number 1, a guy looking like a potato with very much pubes.
Very much
pubes. Number 2, a guy who has a strange life. He has a strange pet or pets, for example, puffins, and a strange family. That seems very specific.
I was just about to say that is weirdly specific with puffins.
And number 3, a guy who blows $8,000 on a night at a strip club with 2 strippers and still goes home alone.
I feel like that would be.
But the really, really weird thing is about 75% of the entries that I went through are in agreement that Emil has a big dick.
You know what? I don't think they're wrong.
And
I don't think Atlanteans are born with small dicks.
but here's the funny thing. About half of those get even more specific, and it's legit 12 inches.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is too much.
Right?
I mean, they are descended from the gods.
There can be too much of a good thing.
But so here's what I'm wondering. Who is this 12-inch dick Emil walking around that everybody wants to put in the Urban Dictionary? It's very specific.
If you email, if you can message us.
He's like an urban legend.
We want to know if that's a man's 12 inches or a woman's 12 inches. Because if it's a man, it's probably closer to 6, which is just great.
Yeah.
That's fine.
It's like Goldilocks. It's
and
just
dear
right.
God, you wouldn't hurt me.
Anyway, thank you for that.
Deborah's eager to get us started on our...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I love that.
I never want to skip that part because I love it so much. My apologies.
I mean, look at everything we would have missed out on.
12 inches of dick. So I have been waiting since the announcement of this book release to see Hawk just kill the motherfucking Duke. I was looking forward to this scene so much. It's my favorite scene in this entire book, actually, not just this section. And it's just chef's kiss whenever Duke realizes that Hawk is the dark one and actually turns to run.
Yeah.
I love it. And Hawk is like, run. I dare you.
Yeah.
I want you to, actually, buddy. You go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
So not only does Hawk completely emasculate the Duke, but then lays the same number of lashes on the Duke's skin as the Duke gave to Poppy.
Yeah.
Then the Duke is actually dumb enough to tell Hawk that Poppy will always be quote unquote his. So what Hawk does is he barely nicks the Duke's heart with the cane that the Duke has beat Poppy with, letting him piss himself and then die very slowly before, as we know from last season, he crucifies him at the right. And I know it sounds super morbid of me, but I just think it was so perfect.
You know what struck me about that scene? Actually, there were a lot of parallels to A Shadow in the Ember, because when I first read A Shadow in the Ember, you've got the Seraphina's stepbrother who's like,
she shoves
horrible.
the cane down his throat.
The scarf or handkerchief or something, whatever, a rope, whatever it was.
No, it is. It's a cat. It's a cane or a cat of nine tails or something like that. But
it's a whip. It's a whip.
Yeah,
the whip.
The handle of a whip.
Yeah. So Niktos shows up. He pees his pants too, which is like very, as the reader, what's the word I'm trying to say? It's like kind of satisfying, right? That like
Right.
this
You're
horrible
so
person is
terrified,
getting
you
what they
pissed yourself.
deserve.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that when I read A Shadow in the Ember, I thought that the stepbrother was going to end up becoming Duke Tierman somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then it seems like that's probably
almost
not
like a
right.
hell purgatory type of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
Right.
it seems like that's not right because he's being tortured, as far as we know, by Nyktos in the abyss.
Right.
But I just thought that was really weird that there are these similarities between the stepbrother
But
and
if-
Duke Tierman.
if-
You know,
If Nyktos is responsible for someone's torture, that would be some pretty good torture to put him back on Earth to die in a very similar fashion.
but don't you think that he would somehow try to step in if he found out that?
That someone was going to kill him and make him piss himself? Probably not.
No, because he was abusing his granddaughter.
Oh, that's true.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point. That's
so
a good
I
point.
feel like that wouldn't have
Yeah.
flown.
So I know one thing we really love to do in this new season is talk about our favorite quote, and mine just happens to be in this chapter. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, if that's okay with you, Miss Whitney, since you're our host.
I'll allow it.
Okay, so there is a quote, and this is what Hawk is saying to the Duke. He says, "You know what I find fascinating about the trees that glow in the blood forest? Besides the fact that you clearly treat these as canes as if they were an extension of your withered cock."
That was.
It's just 100% Castile in that moment, and we don't get to see a lot of. Actually, we see none of Castile in this part of the book when we're reading From Blood and Ash because he's Hawk and
Right.
he's hiding this part of himself. So I love that he got to be himself in this moment, and just because you know that a big issue with the reason he beats Poppy is because of his own issues, right?
Right.
And so the fact
Right.
that he's saying like, "Oh, is it an extension of your withered little dick?"
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Yeah.
So much.
It was a good scene.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite part?
I do. It's not that.
It's not as morbid
It's
and
not
fucked
that
up
at
as
all.
mine.
No, mine. I went more for like the dreamy, swoony, romantic moment. I really, really loved after Hawk catches Poppy on the rise when the Craven are there. And then he follows her back to her room and goes in, busts in, and is like, "We're going to talk about this." And then,
What's he like?
we're going to talk about this.
That's your same voices who did this to you. Can you
Who did this to you?
There you go. And also Batman.
Yeah, it is. I've got one impression. That's it. That's all we get. No, he goes in and she's like in her nightgown already. And from the Poppy point of view, she realizes like she's standing in front of the fire and she's like, "Oh crap, this is a very thin nightgown. He can see everything." And then from Hawk's point of view, he's like, "Oh crap, that's a very thin nightgown. I can see everything." And he's just so like struck by how beautiful she is and is kind of like dumbstruck really for a minute because she's just so beautiful to him, and I loved that. I thought it was really sweet. I
It
enjoyed
is really sweet.
Yeah.
He talks about how decadent her curves are and how perfect they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it.
I loved that too.
What about you, Mindy?
So mine is actually right before that. I loved the moment on the rise after the Craven battle. So when he finds her up there and she's, they run into each other basically. Like we knew he was turned on by her from her point of view, but we really get that inner struggle he has when she's literally trying to maim him. You know, so he's like, "Oh God, she's trying to kill me. Oh, you know,
Why is it hot?
because on the outside from Blood and Ash, he's totally playing it cool, ish. But inside, he's like totally frustrated. He's angry and he's shocked that all this is happening. But then he just isn't, and he's just aroused.
Yeah.
So it just has all that banter we know and love from them. I just think it's just the cream of the crop. Has everything.
It does have
It
really
reminds
good
me
banter.
of Stefan. This scene has everything.
From SNL.
That's really funny.
I did enjoy though that the scene on the rise is particularly almost as long as the scene in the original book.
Yeah.
Because there are some scenes where like he doesn't have as much internal monologue, and this is a part I think that JLA really did some fan service here because we did really need to know what he was thinking in this moment.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
like
and
it.
it was good too, right? Like sometimes authors do fan service, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
like this kind of is just cheesy and
Right,
not that great,
right.
but this is really, really well done. What about least favorite moment?
Mine also has to deal with someone dying.
Mine does too.
Nice.
So it was honestly really hard for me to read that Poppy wanted to kill Agnes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, Agnes had 2 roles in the From Blood and Ash book. We see her at the beginning of the book when Poppy comes to Agnes's house to give her husband dignity in death. He's been attacked by a craven and he's slowly turning. And then Agnes appears again on the night of the rite to warn Poppy about the dissenters. So we learn in this section of the book that Poppy is so lost in her grief over losing Victor and those around her that she's really looking for vengeance. And we know that she would have really deeply regretted this act. And if she had went through with it, I mean, I think it would have changed her fundamentally.
Yeah.
So Hawk really takes this moment to save her from herself just based off his own personal experience, which I really appreciated. But gosh, it was hard to see that side of her.
Yeah. Where it was just like she was so overtaken with like that madness of losing someone so close to her.
Right. What death part bothered you? What was your least favorite, Mindy?
Well, mine's a little less, I don't know. Just this one just
morbid. I'm just going to say morbid.
Well, no, it's not morbid. It's like a character. It's not even a main character. It was just something that like hit me. It's when the guard on the rise had to slit his own throat because he got bit by a craven, and then like he didn't want to turn into one, and he knew he had like seconds before he started to, and then Hawk had to watch it. Just yikes! Like,
well, and when Hawk is impressed with somebody, impressed with the strength and courage that it takes to do something, like that really says something about that person,
like how hard that was, and how
Well, and it's not even bittersweet. That's not the right word, but it's, I guess, especially impactful when you think about from Hawk's perspective, especially like that guard's life doesn't have to be that way. These craven attacks and all this, like it doesn't have to be that way. It's kind of been curated that way by the Ascended.
Right.
And he still had that character and that fortitude to sacrifice himself.
And also for Hawk at this moment to recognize that in somebody, this isn't a dissenter. This isn't one of his, this is somebody that
that's innocent.
Just a mortal.
But even that, like he buys into this whole Ascended thing. And so at this moment, Hawk really doesn't, really is pissed off about all that. So for him to recognize that in somebody he really doesn't like, based on their, preferences and the way they live.
And not just be like, what an idiot.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a good riddance, like he needed to die. It was just, that was poignant.
That was,
we talked about this last episode, but the Craven quote unquote virus, that's what I'm going to call it, has this self-preservation part to it where you can't kill yourself, but ultimately so do human beings, right? So we see a bunch of times throughout the series where someone has been bitten or scratched and they think they're going to be able to kill themselves, but they can't. But ultimately, I do wonder too how many people would actually be able to go through with doing that, right? Because I think you always think you can fight it and it's not going to be you and it's going to get better. And this guy he knows. He's seen enough shit that he knows it's not going to get better. No
and
matter
he doesn't
what
waste time. He's like, all right, it's got to be done.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think very many people could do that.
I don't either.
No,
Shout out to
sure.
the nameless guard.
Yes.
Well, mine, I feel like these are all heavy moments, but mine I feel like was especially heavy, which is why I wrote it down as my least favorite moment. So my least favorite moment was right before Hawk kills the Duke while he's sitting in the office waiting for the Duke to show up. And he tells the reader basically that one of the guards, that he was using compulsion on the guards to find out like what's been going on with the Duke and Poppy. And he says that one of the guards that he interviewed or interrogated was hard when he was talking about what the Duke did to Poppy.
Ooh, I didn't catch that.
Either.
Yeah.
Ew.
He says, I didn't feel bad at all. I killed the guards after I questioned them, and I didn't feel bad about it, especially the one that got hard while he was telling me about it.
That's pretty
Gross.
disgusting.
Right? And I was just like, that is just, that for whatever reason for me, takes it to another level of abuse and torture for Poppy. Like, I don't think, it doesn't seem to me that Poppy really is aware that the royal guards know what's going on to that extent, right? To the extent that they're like getting sexual pleasure from it, just like the Duke is and just like Mazine is, right? Like that just, I don't know, that just put it up another notch to me, and just grossness and vile behavior and abuse of Poppy. And I really did not appreciate that detail.
Yeah.
But it also made sense to me more like why a lot of the guards just like, I mean,
Let
of
it
course they
happen.
didn't say anything,
Right.
but just let it happen. Like they were they were
on by
benefiting
it. Ugh.
benefiting from it as well.
Ew.
Which I know, right?
messed up.
That's
Yeah,
skinny.
I hated that. I hated that.
Well, my biggest revelation from this section might have just turned to that.
What is your biggest revelation?
Well, so we do learn later on in the series itself that Hawk did not order the attack on the right in the way that it was executed, right? So we know now that he only ordered for the houses on Radiant Road to be caught on fire so that the guards could be pulled away so that he could then abduct Poppy. But because the guards are pulled away, dissenters are able to easily infiltrate the right and tons of people die. So even though Castile doesn't make the order, his actions do directly correlate with the consequences, which he does have to work through later. But I had forgotten that was the case and he didn't order for the dissenters to attack the right. And so reading through this when he is like awestruck and he's like, what the fuck is happening? I was like, oh my gosh, this is just, it's not as hard for him as it is Poppy, but he does have to go through a grief process like she does over what he's caused.
Yeah, I don't think I realized that he had anything to do with either part. Like, I knew that he had said that he did not order the people to attack the right at all, but I didn't know that he had ordered the fires.
Like the distraction.
Yeah, I thought that the dissenters that were attacking the right also set the fires, like all on their own. I didn't know that he had anything to do with any of that.
Sorry for clinking my glass. I got overexcited.
How dare you?
And I'm really enjoying Our Nerdiest content.
Well, I'll go ahead with my biggest revelation too. When we were reading from Blood and Ash on the whole scene on the rise when the Craven attack was happening, we talked a lot about Hawk narrows his eyes at one point, like he had like figured something out, and we talked a lot about like what we thought that was. And so from his POV in this book, it seems that I was kind of like an anticlimactic thing for me, but he just was putting together, she's putting the like arrows back where her bow is, like on her back, and he makes this connection that like she has her own bow and arrow, and is like, why does she have her own, why does the maiden have her own weapon like this? And that's the look that he had on his face.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
That is a little anti.
It does
Okay.
tell him a lot about her personality.
True. Well,
yeah,
and
that's
what
true.
she's been taught. It does further move the plot in the direction of she's not who I thought she was.
for sure. Yeah.
Right.
And I did appreciate the like, oh, well, I had this whole theory and now I know the answer to it. And then I was like, well, I kind of liked my theory better than the...
What was your theory?
I think that he could, I was thinking that he could tell that it hurt her to do that motion on
That's
her
right.
back,
We
and
talked
that he
about
was
that.
putting together like, oh, the Duke is hitting you, which he was doing, but not really in that specific moment. So, you know.
Yeah. Your way might have been a little bit more interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's it. JLA, just call me next time. Because clearly you
would've been
need
nice
my
to have
help.
that validation.
I know, right? Mindy, what about you? What was your biggest
So mine
revelation?
comes way, way later. I thought it was, this is totally new information, when Malik and Millicent have come back and we find out they've been killing revenants.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, well, you don't have Drakenfire and you're not a primal, so how are you killing these revenants? And we find out that Draken blood can be used to kill them, and that the Ascended are keeping it in vials.
Isbeth was, yeah.
Yeah, and I assume that it's Jadis that they're getting it
Sure.
from.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good assumption.
I assume they've been doing to Jadis the same thing that they did to Castile, right?
Like
use
harvesting her, basically.
siphoning her blood to keep what they need for when they need it.
Well, and at this point, Jadis is several hundred years old, right? So it's not, I mean, she's
guess.
True, yeah, because
Yeah.
she was a baby in the
Light in the Flame.
yeah.
Well, yeah, she's definitely several hundred years old. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long are we supposed to assume that they've been doing this to her for centuries then?
I don't know if it's centuries. If it is centuries, it's probably a couple of centuries.
Ares brought her with him.
Yes.
Because he apologized for that.
Yeah, so that would have been before Millicent was born.
Yeah.
And she's like 120 or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, at least a century or two.
Yeah.
So we are safe to assume that Jadis has been held and essentially used as a blood bag for anywhere from 50 to 100 years.
I guess.
At least. So double or triple the time of Castile.
She's also in Willow Plains, which we know is where they train their like army. So, I mean, I don't know if she would be somehow training, if she would be prisoner, if she would be being used in like a training simulation somehow or something. I don't know, but I think
they could be forcing her to do training with them as a Draken.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true.
I hope
Maybe.
not. I hope they're not whipping her and stuff. I'm really
I'm
excited to learn more about and see her redemption arc too. Like see her come back on the other side of this.
Learn about her, like see her, right, and her personality, and
Right.
because we don't really know anything about her other than she exists and she's there and she's Nectus's daughter, right? Like,
yeah, and
that's
she's
it.
super cute in the prequel series.
as a little baby.
So I'm getting really depressed. Can we talk about sex?
Let's talk about
Sure.
sex, baby.
I know we really love to talk about our favorite spicy scenes, and I already know what both of yours are. So go first, Whitney. What is your favorite spicy scene in this section?
I actually picked this favorite spicy scene. It actually may not be what you think it's going to be because I didn't.
It's not the willow tree.
It's not the willow tree. I didn't choose the spicy scene because of spice. I chose it because of like character development. My favorite spicy scene was actually Castile watching Kieran have sex with the Dissenter.
too.
But really because it's laying more of that foundation of, first of all, the relationship that Kieran and Castile have, but also the sexual freedom that we've talked about a lot that Atlanteans and Wolven have in particular, that's laying this foundation for why the turning sexual was like the natural course for the story, because some people are still really like kind of salty about that. They
Get
didn't
over
like
it.
They
Yeah.
didn't like it. But I mean, this has been something. Obviously, we didn't know that Hawk watched Kieran have sex with somebody in From Blood and Ash, right? But that dynamic of their relationship is something that's been there from the get-go. And that dynamic of their culture that they are from has been there from the get-go. So
I really liked that because this is my favorite spicy scene too, and I just really liked that it put the spotlight on my man Kieran because he is so hot. So I liked it not for character development. I'm going to say that. So not only does he ask Castile to join in, but when Cass says no, he watches, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
And we talked about that last episode too, how like that's okay, right? And JLA definitely helps us understand that Kieran knows his way around a woman.
yeah, that's true.
I have a question though. I've seen this so much in romance books lately. What is up with the clit smacking?
Yeah,
I don't get it,
that
and
is
I'm
weird.
reading it all the time now, and it sounds like it hurts.
that. Yes, when it said that he did that, I was like, "Ow!"
But seriously, I would say maybe 5 out of the last 10 smutty books I've read have had that in it, and I don't.
I mean, that's not a gentle move.
I mean,
No, it's
somebody
not.
likes it, I guess, or
guess.
it wouldn't be prevalent,
Right.
right
He
now.
does it in a very playful way in this section, but
Yeah.
I've seen it in, especially the woman that writes The Dark King and The Rebel King, Gina Maxwell. She writes a lot about consensual sub and dom relationships, and that's a big part of almost like, what is it called whenever you make someone wait a long time to have an orgasm? What is
Edging.
that? Yeah, it's a big part of edging.
Why do I
How do you know that, Whitney? You guys,
I'm not going to
Whitney-
answer that question.
Whitney may not cuss a lot, but she nasty. But it's a big part of edging, and he's obviously not doing that to her in this scene. So I just does not sound like, don't slap my clit.
Yeah.
Be gentle with it.
Anyway, Mindy, what was your favorite?
Speaking of clits, what's yours?
what was your favorite spicy scene?
Mine, I picked both for the spice and for the
Character
development. But I mean, it's the Blood Forest,
Yeah.
partially because I just like saying finger bang.
There is an episode from last season you titled called "The Blood Forest Finger Bang."
Exactly. But I mean, seriously though, how is it hotter from his point of view, in my opinion?
Oh yeah,
I mean, Lord have mercy. So
I think it's the focus on her.
I think it is.
that's what
I
makes
think
it
that's
hot.
like the turn on is because he is so willing to just give.
He's such a generous lover.
As a generous lover. But then
What a man,
so
what a man.
he still gets a boner, right?
Well,
But
clearly.
He's not dead.
I know, right? So, but he's trying to calm his boner down, and he is.
Like, boner, just take a deep breath.
I'm gonna need you to calm down for a
section,
second.
though. He does.
He does.
I would
How
love it if
awkward
one
would it
time
be?
he did talk to it and said, dude, chill out.
Yeah, could you just like chill for a second?
But while he's doing that, he says his chest feels full and he feels complete. And that he was being complete without reaching completion, which I love that sort of idea. But oh my God, heartmates, right? Like,
yeah.
So that got me thinking, many people on Earth believe in the idea of a soulmate, which is kind of the human equivalent, I would say, to something like that. And so I did a little digging. And the first thing I found was, I thought this was so cool. I never knew sort of where the idea of the soulmate came from. And there may be others, but this one just was so cool. Apparently, the Greek philosopher Plato used to proclaim that humans didn't only have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a face, but that we had 4 arms, 4 legs, and 2 heads, and we were joined to our perfect partner to roam the earth while intertwined.
But can I have my alone time too?
Well,
can we unintertwine?
So the Greek god Zeus decided that we were egotistical assholes and to split
Takes
us
one to know one.
Right. So he split us in half to punish us. So that way we were.
You know what? Just because she wasn't that into you does not mean you have to punish the rest of us.
So we were basically doomed to wander around the earth trying to find our other half. So
that's sad
I know.
and sweet, but also
yeah,
sweet, yeah.
I never thought of where would that even come from?
I know.
I like that sort of explanation. Take it with a grain of salt or whatever, but I kind of, that's canon for me now. But I also wanted to know, what are the signs to look for when you're trying to find your other half? Like when what's generally recognized as indicators that you found your heartmate or soulmate? Because I feel like Poppy and Hawk, it was right in front of their face the whole time. And I know Poppy doesn't really know much about the heartmates at this point, but Kieran knew about it before they did.
They were a little bit willfully ignorant.
Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious, but I searched through a lot of websites and they all kind of said more or less the same things, but I came across mbgrelationships.com and they had the kind of most comprehensive list. And this article is titled 10 Signs Someone is Truly Your Soulmate. By experts.
Oh,
well, then
like it's
what
true.
Makes them experts.
Yeah. So pretty much, I mean, I think they tick off all these boxes. So number 1 is the instant connection. You feel like you already know them, even though you just met. Totally Cass and Poppy, right?
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy.
But be my soulmate.
Number 2, you recognize each other's souls. You are inexplicably drawn to each other. Some say it's because your souls were intertwined in a past life, so they want to come.
It's like
they
the
want
bonds
to
that
want to
tie.
come together.
It reminds me of the bonds that tie.
I know.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's how I know what edging is. By the way, I'm pretty sure it's the bonds that tie.
Do you want to know why you know what edging is? It's in the Guild series.
I was I know I read it somewhere.
Yeah, we liked it a lot. Thanks, Raven Kennedy.
Yeah, that's soon on my list.
Anyway, soulmate. Sorry.
Yes. So number 3, unconditional love, and basically just accepting your soulmate for who they are and what they bring to the relationship, and that's definitely, Hawk from day one.
Yeah.
Number 4, and I thought this one was an interesting one. Eye contact is intense. You feel a true connection, sometimes even a psychic one. You can tell what the other person is thinking just by looking in their eyes or sharing a knowing look across the room.
It's like in Bridesmaids.
Deb is creeping me out, but I can see out of the corner of my eye.
I'm trying to make intense eye contact
It's
with
Bridesmaids when they're we can have a
I'm a rule
conversation.
follower and I need to speak into the microphone properly.
But Mindy and I joke that we're heterosexual life mates.
It's true. That is true.
I wanted to see how intense eye contact could be.
We've definitely, and this comes up a little bit later too, we definitely, I think, have shared moments where we look at each other and we know exactly what the other person's thinking.
Usually it's what the fuck is happening?
So number 5 is you feel physically drawn to each other. So that's sexual chemistry, it's off the charts. And obviously that's true for these two. Number 6, your connection is empathic, which is basically to say that you're on the same wavelength. And this is kind of where I was talking about with you and me, Deb. You might just know what the other person's thinking or actually feel what they're feeling or just finish each other's
Sentences.
I thought you were going to say sandwiches.
I was thinking that, but then I wanted to be your soulmate.
Oh, I love it. Anyway, I planned that. Y'all didn't know that, but I planned it.
That's what I was going to say.
Whitney got it right, and I didn't. Whitney, get away from my soulmate.
You both got it right.
Yeah. So, you said that with a sensuality that I wasn't ready for. You both got it right. Like,
sorry.
Oh.
I don't know what it is about talking to this microphone. It makes me feel very sexy.
Is it its phallic shape?
Yes, and that my mouth is literally touching it.
Well, we did just talk about edging and clit slapping.
Yeah, clit slapping. My mouth is literally on it.
Is there a bead of anything on the tip?
No.
Thank God, no. I would have some serious questions for you in the sexual
That's
butler.
in a lot of books right now too. The bead of moisture
I collecting
collecting at the tip, and I'm like, all right, I get it.
I've never just had a bead.
No, it's the guy.
Oh,
it's the guy. It's their.
Okay, I was like, who's getting a bead on their clit? Because that is not me.
Oh my gosh, please leave that in. Please leave that in.
It's pre-cum, Mindy.
Sorry.
Oh, gosh.
Which I hate that word too.
Yeah, I do too. I hate that
Well, that's
word
why
a lot.
they say bead instead of.
Oh,
They
yeah.
know it's a gross word. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
All right, soulmates.
Okay. So, number 7. This isn't going to go over well. You help each other grow.
Yeah, you do.
That is to say that you encourage each other.
Yep.
You teach and expose each other to new things.
Yeah.
Expose each other. Oh, my.
Yeah, that was not planned.
We are not mature enough for this
No, we're not.
conversation.
We never said we were.
Oh, man.
Okay, so number 8, you support each other in like an I'm your biggest cheerleader sort of way, which I definitely feel
Yeah.
like that goes. Most of these, and I guess it's because it's just what we read from Cass's point of view, I feel like definitely apply to Cass here and not to Poppy until later when she kind of realizes it. But number 9, you trigger each other just enough. Like you challenge each other to grow, but ultimately in a loving way, which is what Hawk does when he kind of gets her angry about something and then they
That's
talk
true.
about it.
Yeah.
And then finally, number 10, they showed up in a synchronistic way, like divine intervention, fates, anyone. It really was sort of obvious that Cass and Poppy are heartmates. They just clearly hadn't read this article yet. So
If only they had been able to go to the article Soulmates from the expert.
Right.
exactly. Yeah, they weren't reading the right stuff, except for Miss Willa's diary.
So do you feel like in this universe, Kieran is a part of their soulmate bubble?
I think, here's the thing. I think Kieran is a soulmate, but in a different, I think Kieran is a soulmate where Poppy is a heartmate, because even some of these things, like where you feel what the other person's feeling, we see that in this, where he feels that twinge in his side when Kieran gets stabbed. And
yeah.
Cass feels it when it happens, and he's like,
Right.
oh, what the hell is
But
that?
that's part of the bonded woven thing, yeah.
True, I guess.
I think so.
but I mean,
so.
I feel like a bonded woven would be a soulmate.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that with the bonded woven as well. Because, I mean, we've talked before how I think Delano is kind of like Poppy's bonded woven. And I do feel it's that kind of relationship, that like soulmate, but in a platonic kind of way.
Right.
But I don't know if I would say that Castile and Kieran are totally platonic, because they're not.
That's true.
You know
they
what I mean?
definitely had group sex with
Right.
and I'm
Like,
assuming
yeah.
they've probably had sex together.
I
I'm
would
kind of
s-
hoping they have. That's hot.
I don't know if I would say that they've had sex just the two of them, but I think they've definitely had
Menage a trois.
yeah, at least threesomes.
Orgies.
I mean, obviously they did with Poppy in War of Two
Yeah.
Queens,
Right,
right?
right.
But they've clearly had it before, because in the scene that we're talking about, Kieran says something like, I know you're messed up in the head because you're sitting over there with a raging boner and you could have joined us and you didn't, right? So that tells me like he's done that before. He has joined him before,
Right.
Right.
I don't know. It's
And
an interesting
Kieran
dynamic.
does
Yeah.
invite him in too, like it's
Yeah.
no big deal. But that's
Yeah.
part of the Atlantean culture at the same time.
Well,
Right.
and Cass kind of expected it too.
Right. Well, yeah, he wasn't like, oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah.
And like,
he just came in and sat down.
He just came in and made himself at home.
And he was like, oh, I think I banged her earlier.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing to me because I would have been like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry, and would have run away screaming and never come back.
Oh, is that whiskey over there?
Yeah, he's like, I think I did her. Like, I recognize those boobs. It was so weird.
One thing that we started in this season is our section MVP, and I will say that Kieran is mine. It's not just because of his sexual prowess in these chapters, even though I thoroughly did
that
enjoy
is part of it.
I really did love how much shit he gives Hawk about his feelings for Poppy, and that he's the only one who's close enough to tell Hawk that obviously plans have changed and that Hawk does have feelings for her. But what really makes Kieran the MVP of this section is how he eggs Hawk on in the Blood Forest and tells him to go warm up Poppy. Did you guys catch that?
Oh, yeah.
So he says, if you don't warm her up, someone will. And it makes it sound like he's going to
right.
if Hawk does not. And so I really kind of loved finding out that Kieran might have been kind of infatuated with her at this time, too, because their friendship does grow tremendously in the War of Two Queens. And then obviously there's the joining. But even though he does act at times like she's kind of annoying at this point in the book, and she does annoy him because she questions him incessantly. Yeah. I do like that he loved the idea of being close to her at the same time, and that's why I asked that soulmate question.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting thought. Who is your MVP, Mindy?
So I just have to go with Cass because, first of all, he was so sinister when killing the Duke, and I'm totally here for it. Like, I feel like that was 100% where the Dark One comes from. You know, like, that's that persona. And it's just raw and real, like his feelings with that. Plus, he's really, really conflicted about his feelings for Poppy, but it always comes down to her having a choice for him. And I think that is a lot of what drives most of this book anyways. And then he even tries to kind of think of some way to get Malik without having to sacrifice Poppy. I mean, he thinks about that constantly.
I love that.
Just all the things he goes through in his mind. And he, you know, and I think at one point even he says, you know, normally I'm like reeling over things in my brain, but this is different. I'm reeling over how to save her without sacrificing her. I think he just really drove the action forward and just, I don't know, he can be so sinister and then be so damn sweet.
Yeah. He's a very complex 3-dimensional character, which I mean, we all love our morally gray characters, right? I went a very different direction for my MVP. My section or chapter MVP was Lev, the Craven hand thrower, who we talked about a little bit last time. He was the dissenter that kind of led Kieran and Cass, Hawk. I keep, going back and forth what I want to call him for this.
They're the same person, people.
I know, but it confuses me in my own head. He kind of led them to the baby Craven that we talked about last time. And so after that happens, when the Duke and the Duchess have this, really bad pep talk of like, the Craven are going to come back and probably attack us more. The
Craven are coming. The Craven are
right. He throws the Craven hand. And I really appreciated that with a little bit different, it had a little bit of a different significance for me after reading the Craven baby scene, right? Like the willingness to, because I mean, he knows he's going to get in trouble and he's going to be arrested and he's probably going to be executed for doing that. And he doesn't even try to like hide what he's doing. He's out there in the open.
Hide his face or anything.
Right. Like he's not doing it in a way where he can get away with it. He's putting himself on the line. And I just have a different appreciation for that after understanding what he's feeling because he saw that baby, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciated the courage that took, and I appreciated his dedication to trying to tell the truth to the people of Solus, right? And I really loved the way that Hawk thought about that whole thing of
he
like,
couldn't do anything
I
about
can't
it.
help you. Yeah.
It does make me wonder though about Lev's hopelessness because he might at this point be like, well, fuck, now they're changing babies, so we're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And I mean, they are. They're screwed right now.
They are. Yeah. Yeah. And he makes a big move, right? Like he's trying to make a big change and he's willing to sacrifice himself to do it.
But it also gets the Duke and Duchess to shut the fuck up with the worst speech ever.
No.
Trying to calm down the crowd.
Okay. And so I don't know what I was thinking from Blood and Ash. I was thinking that like Poppy and Hawk and Tawny and them that were all like up like further away from the dais and like or up in like a balcony or something, but no, the Craven hand flies right past her face.
Right.
I did not realize
Hawk
that.
like moves her out of the way.
Yeah. Ugh.
They were right there. Yeah, that would be
Yikes.
really. It's one of those things where you can't get clean enough if a Craven hand touches you. You know.
Also, I didn't realize Kieran was there the whole time at that.
I didn't either. Yeah, he was in the crowd, and
he was.
Yeah,
yes,
he kind of
was in the
comes
crowd.
up on a horse in the back of the crowd, and
He's
is,
the
like,
one
making eye contact with.
Well, yeah, he's the one that points Lev out to Hawk to say like he's about to do something, you know.
Right.
Which I really
And Hawk
appreciated
doesn't
that.
realize that Poppy already knows. Like she can
Exactly.
feel how furious Lev is. And like
Right.
you just said, though, it's important now that we know that Lev has just seen a turned baby that
Right.
then killed its entire family. So
Right.
yeah, he's really upset.
Right.
Well,
yeah,
we've
and
always kind of understood where he came from, but like that just really.
it's a different level. I mean, just
Yeah.
like Cass. I keep going back and forth. Sorry. Just like Kieran and Cass in that scene are like, this is like next level. Really, like we knew the Ascended were horrible, but this is like a whole other level. Like as a reader, I feel like that too. Right. Yeah. So Lev, the Craven hand thrower. That should be on his tombstone. Craven hand thrower. Yeah.
Unfortunately, he probably doesn't get a tombstone.
I know, but maybe they etched his name in the wall in
Yeah,
New
I
Haven.
hope so.
Yeah, that would.
Whitney.
I know.
So I do want to talk about another favorite character of mine, and my favorite secondary character in this section has to be Miss Willa, and she's not even really in this section yet. But not only does she teach Poppy all that she needs to know from her diary, but Hawk finding Poppy with that book really drops some of the barriers around them and gets both of them to talk about sex in a healthy way.
Yeah.
We know from Whitney's deep dive last season that having sexual confidence and experiencing great sex or good sex, even having an orgasm your first time you have sex, is a huge factor to a woman's sex drive. So I would like to give Miss Wilhelmina a round of applause.
Yes, thank you, Miss Willa.
Thank you,
Golf
Willa.
claps all the way around.
Thank you.
I didn't pick Miss Willa for my favorite secondary character, but I did do a deep dive based on Miss Willa because I was really interested in the idea of that like sex diary and if that's like a real life thing. And so I ended up, I was going to look.
Have you read Penthouse? No, I'm kidding.
No. You know I haven't.
For the record, I'm not either. But I read Playboy.
I was going to do a big, I've only read Cosmos, read Hot Reads.
I read it for the articles.
Right. Yeah. The photography is artistic. No, I was thinking about like, I'm sure that there are real life examples of a Miss Willa diary type book. And so I ended up doing a deep dive on the very first thing that came to my mind, which was Madonna's sex book.
She has a sex book?
See, I thought of the Kama Sutra.
I thought you were going to say Kama Sutra too.
No. So I was thinking about like a first person account of sex, which this
more like a diary.
Right. This Madonna book is not really that, but let me just give you some information.
I'm very intrigued.
In 1992, Madonna released a book called Sex, and it's a coffee table book. Sex. Okay, it's just the one sex. It's a coffee table book of photography, basically. There's also some poetry, some writing that Madonna wrote under the, I guess, pen name or persona of a character that she created, which was based on an actress or pinup model from the 1920s or 30s. So she kind of took upon herself this character of Mistress Dita. And so it's mostly photography. The photography is basically essentially softcore porn and sex simulation, right? Okay. So there's no actual like sex acts happening. It's all simulated and, smoke and mirror type things. She got a lot of her celebrity friends to pose as models for this book. And
like who?
Well,
do you know?
I do know.
Is this on your coffee table, Whitney?
Can you imagine Robbie if I brought that book? I'm like, I got this for the living room. He would.
Whereas on the other hand,
explode.
because I do dabble in the art world, I do have like erotic books in our library about photography. Right? One of them is like all legs, and some of them are breasts and stuff. But they're really beautiful, right? It's just a body, for the record.
It is just a body, but these were like celebrity bodies. So, so this is 1992, right? So this is 30 years ago.
The year I graduated from high school.
Well, I'm just saying in terms of culture, and
it was different.
it was a totally different landscape, right? Like today, if a celebrity released a book like this, I mean, it would get press, but it wouldn't be nearly as controversial as this book was in 1992.
Well, I mean, today their sex pictures get released on social media before it can even make it to the book.
True. So this book, it mostly photography, but a little bit of poetry and writings by Madonna, but written as Mistress Dita. It was influenced by punk, rock, and fashion figures, and included a lot of celebrities, including Isabella Rossellini and Madonna's then boyfriend, Vanilla Ice.
What?
That is what I said. I was like, what? Because I was thinking this was the Sean Penn era.
Yeah.
But it was the Vanilla
like he
Ice
would have
era.
A small pee-pee.
Vanilla Ice?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, I'm not sure. So.
Are we really?
Anyway, this was an extremely controversial book. It got a ton of press and a ton of backlash. Again, 1992.
Right.
She coincided this book release with her album Erotica, which makes sense. It was absolutely brilliant.
She had an album named
genius
Erotica?
marketing.
Absolutely brilliant marketing. So in the first day in 1992, again, before social media marketing, before internet marketing and all that, in the first day, she sold more than 150,000 copies of this coffee table book.
Damn.
It remains the best and fastest selling coffee table book ever.
Really?
Yes.
Good for her.
It holds that record.
It was the MTV era. I bet a lot of it got out that way.
It was, yes. So she basically did almost zero specific marketing for this book. She did do an MTV special that was kind of like a behind the scenes of her album and this sex book. She did a couple of appearances / interviews specifically for the book, but ultimately she let all of the brouhaha be the marketing for her. And it worked because, again, she's continues to be a record breaker for coffee table books, which I think is kind of hilarious.
I'm not going to lie. I want to see what it's all about.
I wrote then boyfriend Vanilla Ice with multiple question marks because I just was so flabbergasted
Did you draw
by
little
that.
tiny peepees in the market?
No, that was a missed opportunity. So again, this is a photography of simulation of sex acts. There's no actual intercourse that is ever shown, but you know how people react to things that they don't actually know about.
The gaps anyways,
right? Like they don't people get in an uproar about something that they don't actually have any interaction with.
Well,
so
it's
they're
like when people want to ban books
right?
when they haven't even read them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So the Vatican actually called for a boycott of this book and Madonna. Citizens in Alexandria, Louisiana, filed a complaint with the police over the release of this book, which I think is so. Can you imagine?
What are the police going to do?
Can you imagine being the police and like,
give me all your copies of sex?
Yeah, like, okay, like, sorry that you're mad about it. Like, what do you want me to do? I just thought that was so crazy. The printer of this book was a company
Had a hard on the whole time.
No, R.R. Donnelly, this company. They also printed a bunch of Bibles. So Southern Baptists, it didn't say the convention. So I think this was like individual churches and maybe like schools or something.
Right.
They basically threatened to pull all of their Bible business from this printer because they didn't want the printer to print the sex
Unfortunately,
book.
that is the most widely printed book in the world. So that would have killed the publishing company.
Right. So I didn't deep dive that, like the threatening their business, but I mean, the coffee table book broke records and continues to.
Can I say something real quick?
I don't think it works.
So I'm on Amazon. My husband does a music podcast called Rock and Roll Bedtime Stories, and I thought this would be a really cool thing for him to do. But I'm looking on Amazon right now, and you can get the Japanese and Spanish versions. If you want the English version, there is a used copy on Amazon for $882.
Oh my
Holy
gosh,
shit.
that's crazy.
Is it out of print?
It must.
I mean, it must
be
be.
for that for
Yeah.
800.
Yeah.
So again, she didn't even need to promote it. I've mentioned the MTV episode special. She also did a Vogue magazine cover as part of her lead up to the release of the book. So the book, ironically, was pretty negatively received critically by the critics. It was just kind of like, basically they were saying, I mean, okay, like great. There's nothing exciting about these pictures. There's nothing like new. There's nothing really edgy. It's just like pictures of celebrities pretending to have sex, I guess. Like, good for you, Madonna. But like the critics were really kind of negative about it. But I think that they were coming from a like, well, Madonna is not an artiste, so clearly the book can't be good.
Or
you know
that
what I
she
mean?
was just going for shock
How do they
value.
know
Right.
she's not?
Well, but that's just how they.
Right.
That's just how
my
they
point,
reviewed
though.
it,
It's
right?
purity
'Cause they're
culture.
Well,
douchebags.
sure. So, yeah, it was very much like, you know, this isn't real art. This is shock value. Like, she's just trying to make people
Well,
upset.
I mean, I will say everything she did at that time was shock value, but I do think it's good that she had a book depicting consensual, healthy sex.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. So that whole era, Madonna was kind of doing very like pushing the envelope. Again, early 90s, right? So it didn't take a whole lot to push the envelope, honestly. But she had this sex book released. She had her album Erotica, which obviously was very sexual. She did a movie called Body of Evidence, which one of my favorite podcasts, How Did This Get Made, did an episode on this movie, Body of
Really?
Evidence. Yes, which is basically like an early 90s sex thriller where it's a lot of like gratuitous sex scenes. And that movie, I think, did very, very poorly. Like, it was also not critically received.
I have heard of that movie referenced in terms of like teen, like, ooh, we're gonna watch Body of Evidence type
because
of thing.
like lots of boobs, like that kind of thing. She, in the same time period, she did an appearance on Letterman where she was just kind of erratic. It reminded me a lot of the Drew Barrymore Letterman, if you guys remember, like in the earlier mid 90s.
But here's the thing, he was going for shock value too.
1000%, yeah. But Madonna like gave him underwear and asked him to smell it during her Letterman interview.
Okay,
so,
but I'm sorry I keep
know.
interrupting you, but like
You do.
I have a lot to say about this, and I hope it's okay because this is a discussion podcast.
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry I keep interrupting you, but like pre-COVID, there was a Keeping Up with the Kardashians episode where the sisters they took wash rags and wiped their hoo-haws and had each other smell each other's vajayjays to see if they stinked.
I do not recall that.
They smelled, right? So why is it okay for the Kardashians to go wipe their vaginas and have their sister smell it?
But again, we're talking about almost 30 years
But that's my
difference
point.
in culture.
Right,
you know?
right. But and that does say that we've come a long way. But
Right.
and I guess it's good that maybe that wasn't as shocking if you don't remember it, because I know
I
I know
don't.
you love trashy reality.
I do. I don't know
You're gonna
that
have to
episode.
go. You're gonna have to go find this episode.
I'm gonna look it up
At the
later.
same time, I'm like, who cares? Like, and again, it was
Yeah.
1992 or whatever, and I
Right.
get it.
Right.
But even now, if someone took off their underwear and told someone to smell it, that is a little personal. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, who the fuck cares? You don't have to smell it. You don't have to take them.
And
Like,
see, I didn't watch a clip or anything, but it didn't seem like she took them off. It seemed like she had them like in her pocket.
Yeah.
But yeah, this whole time period, Madonna was doing stuff like that where for early 90s people were just like, she's a heathen and going straight to hell, like God's going to find her immediately. I actually thought it was interesting in the early to mid 2000s, Vanilla Ice and Isabella Rossellini both publicly said that they regretted doing it. I don't know that they really had reasons other than just like, yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't done that. Vanilla Ice said basically like, I mean, I was doing erotic pictures with my girlfriend and with my girlfriend's friends, and like my kids can see that now, and it's kind of like, I kind of wish I hadn't done that.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. I will never regret doing this podcast because I am who I am, but I don't let my 15-year-old daughter listen to it. And visual's a lot different because you can't really hide that.
Right.
Yeah.
But Naomi Campbell did the book, and she has said on record that she's glad that she did it and she thought it was a great project and whatever. So what the parallel that I really found super interesting that brings me back to Miss Willa's diary is...
Oh, wait, are we talking about that?
I know, right? So Madonna has said that she really wasn't just trying to make people mad. She wasn't really just trying to like shock people, although she knew that would happen. She said that she wanted to do this book about sex to liberate America. And so I was thinking about that, and I thought, what a great motivation for Miss Willa, because she's got this diary that in later books, she is Atlantean, right? Like she's very high up in the Atlantean, like social leadership, but no one in Atlantia knows that she has this book, right?
Right.
It's only the people in Solus. And which culture is the one that is sexually repressed and dealing with purity culture?
Right. That's a good point.
And I was like, that is so interesting to me to think about Miss Willa thinking about it, like Madonna thinking about this book, right? Of like, I
So-
need to liberate these people. So
Like, normalize
I'm going to
it,
give them
yeah.
all the information,
Here's what's
right?
interesting on Amazon too, because I told you the English version of that book is like $882.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You can get the Spanish version or the Japanese version for less than $200. Which, I mean, if it's an out of print exclusive book,
Right.
it's going to be expensive, right?
Right.
So I find it interesting that I wouldn't say that Japan is a more sexually liberated culture, but
Right.
Spain definitely is. And I find it interesting that it's at least expensive to get it there because
Yeah.
people are like, well, what's the big fucking deal? They're naked and they took some pictures together.
I wonder how many people in America, because this is how we roll, I wonder how many people bought it and then like burned it. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, I mean, you still bought it.
Yeah.
You still supported the
Yeah.
artist.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
you still bought
Kinda
it.
like
So
having
That was a fail.
Having a physical book on my TBR for 2 years doesn't bother me because I supported the artist. So it's fine,
yeah.
right?
So yeah, I mean, maybe Miss
At
Willa.
least that's what I tell myself.
Miss Willa's just, trying to liberate Soulless.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, honestly, I think that's really what the motivation is.
Well,
So,
and obviously it's working because ladies in
liberates
wait
Poppy,
are talking
yeah.
about it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we have found that the women in Soulless are more sexually liberated than your conventional American woman.
Oh.
If I'm going to say that out loud, I know
Yeah.
we have what I love about Bookstagram and our podcast is we have a lot of international listeners, and thank you so much
Yes.
for that. But oh my God, Americans are so prude.
Yeah.
Like we are so uptight about sex.
Yes.
And that's essentially how the leadership in Soulless are, but not necessarily how the women are. Having said that, they don't believe in women warriors. There's still a lot of things they need.
women
to
are
work on.
supposed to be like pretty
Yeah.
and
I'm
pleasurable.
so pretty. I'm very pleasurable.
My secondary character was Kieran, which last week I think he was my MVP and he was your MVP, Deb.
He's just great all around.
He is. So, but what I loved about him in this is one, that he knows what Cass is going to do before Cass even does most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And I love that it was his idea for Cass to go snuggle with Poppy and keep her warm. Yeah, I know Deborah brought that up. And he also recognizes that she makes him happy
I know.
and that he rests better when she's around.
He
And
says that he's laughed and he hasn't heard him laugh in years.
I know. It's so sweet. So we're finding out so much about, what kind of stuff we already knew, but like seeing it through Kieran's eyes is just so cool. I loved that he agreed with Cass that it was hot when Poppy killed Craven. That little exchange was hilarious. He was
I
like,
forgot about that. Right. He's like,
Yeah.
that was hot, right? And he's like,
oh,
it was
yeah,
so
it was.
hot.
but the funniest thing he did, because we all know he gets annoyed by Poppy's questions, she asks him what his horse's name is, and he says it's Pulis, which isn't the horse's name, and also it's a lesser god who served under Penelope and is known for asking a lot of questions.
I loved that detail.
I just love his humor. He just makes me laugh.
Yeah,
I love
I
it.
thought that was
Intellectual
really
humor.
funny.
There's our intellectual. I don't see Emil as an intellectual, but I do see
Yeah.
Kieran as
I
one.
don't necessarily see Emil as intellectual. I feel like he carries himself like he is.
Well,
Sure,
that might
okay.
be true. The
Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he's wearing an A ascot.
You know what's funny? I said we all shared our favorite secondary
You
character,
didn't.
right? And I definitely didn't. And neither
Oh.
did you.
You just went off my favorite
I
secondary
know. I was
character,
like,
Miss
wait,
Willa.
didn't I? Nope, I sure
Who's
didn't.
yours?
So my favorite, this is kind of my favorite secondary character and my favorite quote because I chose my favorite secondary character because they said my favorite quote.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
What's the quote?
Well, I'll tell you the character first. So it's Tawny is my favorite secondary character, which we know. Tawny is hilarious. Tawny is the best hype girl.
Oh, yeah.
Tawny is like the BFF. She's fun. She's hilarious. She's got Poppy's back. Like she's just the best. But she said my favorite quote, and it was after Victor died. And it was when Poppy was still asleep. She might have still been taking the sleeping potion or whatever, but Hawk was asking Tawny, like, what's the update today, right? And Tawny's like, I already told you, but I'll tell you again. Like, it hasn't changed. And she says, like, you care about her. And then she says, it's okay. I won't tell anyone. And I'm like, oh, that's so
that is
sweet.
so
It's because she
sweet.
knows that he genuinely cares about her, but she also knows, like, the reality of Poppy's life is that nobody can like her.
Yeah.
Right? So
Right.
it's like, I'll keep this. She knows that Poppy is into him,
Yeah.
but now she also knows that he is into Poppy. And I just really love that. And
That
that
is
like,
really
it's okay.
sweet.
I won't tell. Like,
Oh, that
I mean,
makes
she
my
was
heart
100% going to tell Poppy, though.
Well, right? But
If
I
she
loved
hadn't left,
that.
she would have been like, "Hey, Hawk's kind of into you." He slept
know.
next to you when you were asleep, which I don't think anyone knows that except for Hawk himself, which was
Yeah.
something I really loved from
thought
this
that was
section too.
adorable.
Yeah. Well, and maybe the Duchess too, because there was that weird interaction with the Duchess that coming into Poppy's room and is like, "I see you're very devoted to
Oh,
Poppy."
yeah, that was awkward.
It was weird.
Yeah.
Because once again, it was one of those scenes like we talked about in From Blood and Ash episodes where the Duchess kind of seems cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it seems like she's
the cool mom. It's okay if you're
Yes,
into it.
but it's weird.
Until Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and she's not so
Exactly.
cool anymore.
Exactly. But it's that weird like she
You
seems
gotta wonder
not horrible.
though. I would love a quick novella from her point of view.
Oh, me too.
Because her entire tone does change when she comes
Completely.
to comes to where is it, New Haven or Spessa's End?
Spessa's End.
In A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, and she is like a completely different person. So
Yeah.
you got to wonder how much the Blood Queen was threatening
I was
her.
just about to say that there had to have been an interaction.
JLA,
Yeah.
if we could have a novella, I'm like 300 pages from Duchess Tierman's point of view, that would be great.
I was thinking too. I would love a like origin story for the Tiermans.
Yeah.
The Duke, like who were they before they became ascended? Why were they put together as a couple? Like the
That
Duchess
would be a really cool.
The Duchess in particular is just odd. Like
Yeah.
she's just
She's an odd character.
Yeah, it's just
And
really strange.
we have to remember she was also getting abused this entire time.
Yeah,
True.
That's-
true.
So she's a multi-dimensional side character for sure.
yeah. I would love more information about her.
Well, my favorite quote actually is justice for Duchess Tierman.
That's funny.
Because I've already talked about how sinister Cass was when he killed the Duke, but my favorite line is he turns and says, "Well, Your Grace," and it says, facing him, my smile returned. "I do believe you will make a fine centerpiece for the right."
Yeah.
That was
forgot.
That is
just
a good one.
so dark one. Like yeah.
Can you imagine
That's a good
about
one.
to die though, and someone being like, "By the way, I'm going to hang your body up so everyone can see it." And I mean, he pisses himself.
Yeah.
I love it.
I was just thinking that is something that Poppy does not pick up on because I feel like she would have mentioned that in her perspective, right? And when she sees
Right.
the Duke,
Like she'd be like, he's got a big old wet spot. Yeah.
right, like that's something. Although maybe at that
Maybe it
point,
dried.
well, maybe
But I
it was
will say
covered with blood.
a banner and stuff falls in front of him.
Well,
too,
that's
though,
true, too.
So he
Yeah.
could have been shielded. Part
Yeah,
of his
that's
body
true.
was.
100%.
He
Cass
doesn't
was like, "Hey,
deserve
by the
that.
way, he pissed himself."
Did
when
you
I killed him."
notice? Did you notice the wet
You
spot
know,
on
he
his
at
pants?
least told Kieran, right?
Oh, I'm
He was
sure
like,
he
"I
did,
pissed
yeah.
himself." That was hilarious.
I'm sure he did.
I have a couple of questions that I need answered before we wrap up this episode. One of them you've already heard, and it's what's with the clit slapping. If we can have a listener write to us and just tell us, like, if it feels good, how do you do it right? I'm very interested in this. Okay. But number 2, how in the world did Kieran and Hawk not put together that Poppy was Atlantean when they realized that only Atlanteans can be born in a shroud?
I know.
I
It's
mean,
driving me nuts.
Again,
that bothers me
it's
too.
like willful ignorance, just like with Poppy. And
Right.
Well, they're like, there's
Yeah.
no way, right? But they know that Poppy is needed for the right to create new Ascended, which they know you need Atlantean blood to do. And they've also pieced together that humans can't be born in a shroud.
I do think they wonder at one point whether or not that's true.
they assumed that the Ascended just
made
made
that
it
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good point. But it
But
bugs the shit out of
It bugged me too,
It's,
though. Yeah.
it's just, again, just like the Heartmates thing. There's so many
Clueless.
pieces of evidence that they're just like, oh, that's kind of weird. And it's like,
Whoa, man.
yeah, like use your brain for a second.
Right.
Mindy, did you have any questions?
I just had a couple. I think I've actually wondered this before, but why? And Cass actually wonders it in these. Why does the mist do what it does, and why does the same magic that protects the Scotus Mountains also serve to conceal
That's
the
my
Craven?
same-
It's
I
been
have
brought
that
up more
question,
than
too.
once that it's the same as Primal Mist. So I want to
Yeah.
know, and they bring it up deliberately in this book.
Yeah.
So I want to know where that's going.
Because even Cass and Kieran are clueless about it.
I think it has to be. I have that same question. My current theory is that it has to be Colas because we know that
Surely.
he creates he and his people create the Craven first when he's trying to create
Yeah.
revenants. I'm not sure that anybody knew that you could create Cravens
Yeah.
like that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. but
I just think it would be. I really want to know
That's a good idea. It's from Colas.
And
I mean, I can definitely see that.
I think
for sure.
in one of the From Blood and Ash episodes from season 2, I also theorized that it might just be because mortals have some ether in them because they come from Nyktos' dad. I can't remember his name. When he was the primal of life, like he and Nectus made mortals.
Yeah.
You know, what's his face? But yeah, I wrote that exact same question because it's so obviously questioned in the book.
Yeah.
But like, where's our answer?
I feel like we'll get it eventually. Maybe. I don't know.
I hope so.
But then the other one I had was, and this is, I don't necessarily need a resolution for this, and it's probably something that Whitney knows the answer to, and I just missed it. I was just wondering, so Cass says, I looked to the dais to where I'd left the Duke. Nothing but ash and black smear against stone remained of him now. So did somebody bloodstone him after the fact? Did they set him on fire?
They set him on fire.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if that's what happened, but it like threw me off. I was like, wait, he had just pointed out that he's not going to do the ash thing.
Yeah, they set him on fire because in From Blood and Ash, I think Tawny's the one that points that out, but it's when Poppy is like kind of hysterically like, look, they killed the Duke. Yeah, hooray. You know, just like she's kind of all over the place. Yeah. But I think it's Tawny that's like, oh my gosh, they're setting him on fire.
I thought maybe it was just something I missed, but like, I don't know.
They set him on fire.
That stood out to me.
Well, I mean, that's how they deal with all dead bodies, right?
True.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Did you have any other questions, Whit?
No, mine was just the mist.
Yeah.
I still just want answers.
Me too.
JLA, thank you in advance for the answers you will provide. So what are you guys looking forward to for the last section of the book?
I really cannot wait to read about Hawk getting stabbed in the heart by Poppy, their snow sex, and then finally his realization that Poppy is Atlantean. I have read ahead, and I really have enjoyed this part of the book. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, mine is just New Haven, generally, like all of it. I just
so
I
a third
love it
of
so
the book.
much. Yeah, you know, the whole next section.
What about you, Min?
I just really, really can't wait to know what the fuck Cass was thinking when he walks into the barn and is a total dick to her. Like where that comes from and what motivates it.
Yeah, I think you'll get some answers.
I do think
you
I
will
get some
too,
answers.
because I've read ahead.
Didn't we all?
Were there any other tidbits that you guys wanted to be sure and bring up?
I had.
Go ahead, Min.
Well, first of all, Hawk wants a dick piercing. That was like,
explain.
what?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he said in one of the present chapters.
Yes.
He says something like, if she wanted me to do it, I would, or something like that. And Kieran was like, I'm going to have to see that happen.
Again, this is very popular in romantasy right now because we see in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, Rune has a dick piercing, which, oh my God, he's my favorite boyfriend. And then I just read an arc called These Dangerous Fates, and the vampire, like, fated mate guy has more than one. And she talks about how good it feels.
Oh, my.
In Pucking Around, one of the love interests has a Jacob's Ladder.
Okay, what's a Jacob's Ladder?
It's like several, like, stacked.
Is it like ribbed for her pleasure
basically,
type of thing?
Yes.
All right. My sexual butler produces this podcast. Hello.
There's some double penetration too, and I guess the guy can feel it too.
Interesting.
Or whoever's in the.
I'm really excited to read that book.
It is so good. I'm rereading it now.
I'm so confused by what you just said. You don't need to explain it. I'm just saying. So
it's actually not. What is it then when it's one's in the ass and one's in the vagina?
It's double penetration. But if you have questions, listeners have questions.
That's true.
I think what Mindy is saying though is that if he has a Jacob's Ladder and it's essentially creating friction inside her, if someone is also penetrating her from behind, they could feel that because that wall is
like pushing
the other person.
Yeah. Right. So she can feel it and the other person can feel it. I am so turned on right now.
I'm just uncomfortable.
That might be you being turned on.
No, I don't think so. I did have one tidbit. It was my runner-up for favorite quote, and it was when Hawk really was telling Kieran, like, I'm going to kill the Duke because he's doing this to Poppy. And at the end of the conversation, Kieran says, make it hurt.
Yeah.
that was the runner-up for my favorite
Kieran's
quote.
my MVP.
I know, because he's trying to tell him not to do it. And then he's like, he's caning her? Like, all right, make it hurt. Like, I loved that a lot.
Kieran Contro, I love you.
Did you have any
I didn't.
extra tips?
No, I have interrupted you all enough.
I actually had another couple.
No.
Sorry. I love. There's this one moment. I guess it's when he's watching Kieran and Circe go at it. He fantasizes about a threesome with Kieran and Poppy.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And so that's another
too.
like heads up, people.
The joining is happening.
Get on board.
At this point, obviously, it has happened, but
and then also related to the joining, there was a moment where I think Cass was kind of wondering why he and Kieran kind of felt fine, like they weren't eating and they weren't sleeping well, but they felt fine, and he can like the joining connected all three of them, and then while Poppy's in stasis, they feel great, and he says he thinks it's because there's so much powerful ether in Poppy that it's fueling them all.
Yeah,
which I thought was so badass.
I'm glad you said that, because that was an overall question I had about the book, is like, why don't Cass and Kieran feel bad while Poppy's asleep, or why don't they feel tired or run down?
Yeah. Right.
And so I feel like JLA had to put that in.
Right.
Well, and it's like what Necta said at the very beginning, right? Like, she's okay. She's just asleep. So I feel like that's just hitting that home.
That's a good point.
A little bit more.
I guess Poppy wouldn't feel tired just because Cass was asleep.
Right.
Well, it's
Yeah,
true.
I guess
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, it would suck to be joined to someone that's a napper.
Or a narcolepsy or something, like, oh shit, I just fell
Because,
asleep.
man, I love a good nap. Even if I'm not super sleepy, I love snuggling under the covers and going to sleep.
Naps, I don't normally nap, but this summer has just kicked my butt, and I've been napping a lot, and it's been lovely. Well, so let's get into our nerdiest things of the week. Who wants to go first?
You go first, Deb.
Oh, okay. So my nerdiest thing is kind of a double whammy. So during the pandemic, I was looking for like an online workout accountability group, and it just so happened that Sam Hewen from Outlander went online and said, I've got this thing called the Peakers, and I joined it at that time. I joined it like the week it came out that year. It was in February, and what it is it's an online fitness community. They have like monthly workouts, they have meal plans, and it's really this amazing community that builds each other up. Having said that, there's all these subgroups that I'm actually like an admin ambassador for. In Kentucky, we have a Kentucky Peakers group because the group is called My Peak Challenge. And what I really love about the group is it's not just about working out. Your peak of the year can be whatever you need it to be, right? Physical or not. And so this group gets together once a month and we do different things together. And so if you listen to last week's episode, or even any of our bonus episodes from last season, I fucking love the Barbie movie. It is so good. I cannot talk about it enough. And so I was responsible for planning our meetup this month, and so we're going to see the Barbie movie this Saturday, and I'm really excited to see it again.
That'll be a great group to see that
and
with.
I'm going to be like, hi Barbie, to everyone I see. And
Hi,
I'm going to be, no. You've obviously not seen it yet, have you?
No. Because I thought we were going to go.
Right.
But then you saw it.
I saw it on vacation, but that doesn't mean I won't watch it again.
I actually saw it with Molly.
Yeah.
But I will
We will go with you
100%
again.
go see it again.
100%.
Yeah.
So you're even welcome to come to me with Lexington on Saturday if you want to see it. But no, there's no hi Ken with me.
That's the song.
Yeah, no.
From like whatever, 1997 or whatever it was.
No. Just trust me.
I know, but that is a song.
It is
and that is how it
song.
goes.
Oh, you mean the Barbie girl?
It's
Yeah.
not
Barbie
a song.
Hi, Ken.
It's
Right.
not the song for this movie. And you'll
That's
understand
fine.
why when you see it. It's really good. It's really good.
And it's
so that's what I'm doing this
actually,
week.
there's a sample of it in the movie, but they don't use that song in the movie at all.
You only say
that's
hi to
interesting.
Barbie.
Yeah.
That's interesting that they didn't use.
You'll see why when you see
Yeah.
it. I don't want to
Wow.
say anything.
We're going
love
to take you. I'm going
I'd
to
love
kidnap
to be
you.
a part of it someday.
Sorry. For the record, I was on vacation. I was tired of sitting around the house. So I was
Well,
like,
and for the record, my 19-year-old daughter
I was gonna
asked
say,
me to
if
see it
your
with her, and
kids
I'm like,
invite
yes.
you, if your kids are like, let's go do this, you do it. Yeah,
but
100%.
I will see it as many times as you want because it is like the show of the year. It is so good.
It's also going to be one that when Annabella's old enough, you'll want to watch with her. It has it's
And then
it's a
She's
Robbie-
not going to understand.
and then
it.
Robbie will be like, "You'll get all this feminist stuff," and I'll be like, "Yes."
There was a girl. There was
He'll be
a
like, "You are not enough."
there was a like little 7-year-old girl, and they left in the middle of the movie
There
because
are
it's
a lot
not
of,
appropriate.
A lot
for-
of people I've seen taking like their
It's not
young
a kids
kid-
movie.
It's
Well,
not.
I'm like, did you not? Google.
Well, and Greta, I think it's
Gerwig.
Gerwig. Yeah, I was going to say Grunberg, but that's not the right person. She is a feminist director.
Right.
I mean,
Like,
and
that's her
that's
thing.
why they picked her. Now, one thing I'm really disappointed about is Mattel has now announced they have 21 other movies that they're going to do based off Mattel toys.
Good Lord.
This movie did not do well because it's a Barbie movie.
Right.
This movie did well because of the message.
Yes.
Right.
And it resonates with every woman on
because
the
of the
planet.
cast, too,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like,
But there is a, and I talked about this, I think it was last episode. There is a monologue by America Ferrera where I burst into tears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to do that about a movie about a fucking magic 8-ball. That is one of the movies on
Are you
the dock.
kidding me?
No. I'm like, no, you guys, you're not understanding why this movie was popular.
Yeah.
It
You
is
missed
doing
the
so
point.
well.
Yes.
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I would
Lord.
love to do a bonus episode for a Magic 8-Ball movie.
Put it on the calendar.
do like a How Did This Get Made style.
Right, yeah, we could do that.
That's so funny.
Whitney, what's your nerdiest thing? And I'm sorry we haven't seen the Barbie movie with you yet. We will. We will.
I was
promise.
actually going to go see it once both of my kids are back in school. That's
Oh,
what I was-
without us?
Well,
I mean, I'll be working.
As long as
Yeah,
it's
I
past noon, I'll go with you.
well, I have two nerdy things. So one of them really is the Ariana Grande cheating scandal, which I saw somebody, a bunch of people on TikTok have been talking about it, but one of the things that a lot of people have been saying is like when you do musical theater and like the one straight guy, like everybody, it's a canon event. Everybody falls for the straight co-star. And it made me laugh so hard because I 1000% did that when I was doing like theater when I was still in school. But anyway, yeah, like dude was SpongeBob and it's just so funny to me. But anyway, I've really gone down the rabbit hole with Ariana Grande and the wicked, the guy who plays Bach.
Oh, okay. See, I know nothing about
so
this.
she's not Elphaba, sorry. She is Glinda, and this guy's Bach.
Okay.
And they both have like left their spouses.
Oh.
And he has like a very
Not-
young baby with his
Right.
high school
I
sweetheart.
think she's like,
Oh.
the baby's like less than 3 months old or
yes, like a
something.
brand new
Oh,
baby. And yeah, it's like, it's really is not a good look at all.
Yeah.
But the comments have really made me laugh because I'm like, yep, I did
One
that.
of the
I did that.
comments I read was like, okay, where like from Ariana's point of view, is this worse than the donut licking scandal?
It's really, and what's really been funny is like seeing people react to a picture of this dude for the first time. Like it's really, really like that's mean.
Is he
but
kind
it's,
of a doof?
oh my gosh, he is SpongeBob. So
okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so there's that.
I'm
Here's
gonna have
the
to
It's
thing.
a rabbit hole.
You can't help who you are attracted to or eventually fall in love with. But if you're in a relationship, you can take yourself out of that
If
situation.
you're married,
Before
yeah.
you-
Right. Yeah. So if
There were
you-
choices made there.
If
You
you
know,
have feelings for someone, you can make a conscious decision to separate yourself from
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah, and that did not happen. Then my other nerdy thing is really actually nerdy. Reading Portal is launching Kingdom of Flesh and Fire page overlays with Dominique Wesson.
Oh,
again
they
as
look
the-
so good.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have an alarm set in my phone for like when they go on sale, and I've got it in my calendar to send me a reminder.
So
like
your BFF Deb over here texted you when she was ordering the From Blood and Ash ones. So you're going to do that for me, right? And order some for me?
oh yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah. I was like, wait, this week? Like, no, that was a long time ago.
That's last year.
Yeah. So that's this week as of the recording, but they will be available, I think, for pre-order when this episode is released. So go
can't
check them
wait.
out because they look awesome.
There's another company, and I'll look it up and look in the show notes, that's doing the Throne of Glass ones right now.
The
And it's-
portraits.
Yeah, no, not the portraits. Alex_Oxy is doing like scenes, like page overlay scenes, and I need to look and see what company it is, but they
Yeah.
are so fucking good.
I need to look those up. I haven't seen those. Mindy, what's your nerdiest thing?
Well, my nerdiest thing is that I got an ARC this week of a book that's coming out soon, and it's highly anticipated. It's, I guess I can say it. It's Helena Hunting's Shattered Truths. It's the third book in a series that she's writing about. It's basically the grown-up kids of the people in the Pucked series. So it's sort of got all those, I don't know, intertwines that. And you get to see, like, you know, daddy hockey player from Pucked. And it's just really cute.
Daddy.
But that's not the nerdy part. I read it in 2 days, and the only reason it took me 2 days is because my husband planned a trip for us to go like ride these
Son of a bitch.
these rails, but which was really fun. Which really
ride those rails.
that did not come out right. There's something now
I
that
think
like
we just went back to like 1850.
I know. No, it really is like this. You pedal this sort of bike contraption, but it's not. But it's
on a railway.
But it's on a railroad, yes. And so it was really fun. That might have been a nerdy thing that I did too. But really, but anyway, I read this arc in 2 days, and then after I finished it, I posted that I loved it and all that. And then the lady that sends out all the arcs and stuff for Helena said, "Oh, I have some more audio arcs." And I don't do audio books. And I was like, I want one.
You don't reread books, typically.
I don't, but I am absolutely, I'm already starting. Like I'm about halfway through the audio arc.
So Pucked is on my TBR, so I shouldn't read this yet, right?
No, don't read. I mean, it really doesn't matter.
But
you could.
But if
it's a standalone series, but you'll understand a little bit more about some of the
I'll
read
adults. Pucked first, like Pucking Around, not Pucked, right?
No, this is from Pucked.
So tell me the difference between Pucked and Pucking Around. Is Pucking Around a novella?
It's a different author.
It's a different author.
Oh shit! I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No, it's all right.
Yep,
Both are good books, though.
Both
right?
are amazing.
Yeah, Pucked is Helena Hunting, and then Pucking Around is Emily Rath.
Oh, that's right. And we're going to have Emily on the podcast soon.
We are.
So,
yeah.
But so I'm nerdily listening to an audiobook right after I read it.
I'm all about rereads, so I think that's great.
I know. I was actually looking at your Goodreads today because you posted a review.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, Whitney's not sent me a review in a couple days. And I went and looked and I was like, oh, she's rereading shit. Yeah.
Well, that's it for this episode. Next time, we are going to finish out our discussion of A Soul of Ash and Blood. We'll be talking about chapters New Haven through the last chapter, Present 12.
See you all then.
Bye.
Bye.